So before I start, I will say I am very, very nervous about doing this. So please bear with. Also, something to bear in mind, I am obviously an assistant psychologist. I'm not a qualified psychologist. So these are the things that I've been learning along the way. I'm not qualified to deliver any therapy, like without being under supervision, that sort of thing. So these are just things that I've picked up along the way. If anything doesn't make sense along the way, please do let me know and I will answer any questions. I've tried my best to relate everything towards weight loss, of course. Oh, yes. And I will be looking for some audience participation as well, please. So I'll be sharing with you guys some of my own personal experiences along the way that have related to my personality vulnerabilities and something that people may be able to relate to as well. There will be quite a lot of information. I don't expect people to take everything in. I'll share the slides afterwards as well. But if you're going to be writing stuff down, try and write the stuff down that relates most to you, because there'll be stuff on here that doesn't relate to you and will only relate to specific people. So first of all, there's a theory in psychology called schema theory. And basically it is people in the waiting room, sorry. Basically it says that our childhood experiences, the way we are brought up in the world, whether that be by parents, peers, social influences, that's what helps develop our views of the world and of other people as well. So what is a schema? First of all, a schema is, I'm trying to make sure I've got everything up here and it's not playing ball. So a schema is something that develops, that determines how we think, feel, act and relate to the world in the way in which we view ourselves and others in the world. They develop from early childhood experiences, from parents, peers and social influences. Maladaptive. So maladaptive is like negative. So maladaptive schemas begin to develop when one or more of a child's basic needs are not met. And these needs are safety, connection with others, self-esteem, self-expression, and realistic limits. Now, bear in mind that these needs do not need to be met perfectly. They just need to be met good enough for these schemas not to develop. So when a child is being deprived in these areas, it's not always necessarily in the same way. It could be through lack of nurturance. So maybe we're not getting enough emotional attention. It could be lack of empathy. So maybe we are getting attention when we're being emotional, but mum and dad are quite negative towards it and punitive towards it. Or lack of guidance. Mum and dad just aren't giving us the right guidance to get us through life, sort of thing. And then because these schemas have developed, we reenact our experiences from childhood in our adult life. And through these reenactments and these repeated behaviors, it feeds into the schema. So it makes those beliefs even stronger than they were before. So for example, sorry, not for example. So how we react to our childhood experiences determines how we then behave in relation to those schemas. And this is understood as the biological temperament. So it's how we automatically respond to the experiences based on just who we are. So an example might be 2 children can be raised in the same environment, potentially having been physically or sexually abused. One child is entirely passive towards it and just allows it to happen. Now that child will most likely grow up to believe that they deserved to be abused and will then likely end up in abusive relationships, whether that be friendships or intimate relationships as well as they get older. The other child fights back against it. The abuse might continue to occur, but each time they fight back, they're not passive towards it. Now that child will then overcompensate because they felt weak as a child. They will try to feel more powerful as an adult, and they will likely become a perpetrator, an abusive perpetrator as an adult. So this biological temperament determines our coping styles to the schemas that we develop. Now, these coping styles are called avoidance, surrendering, and overcompensating. So an avoider, we tend to ignore the beliefs related to our schemas to avoid any pain that we may experience if the schema is triggered. So that's the point of these schemas. If any of these schemas are triggered, then we feel some sort of pain, whether that be emotional, physical, whatever. Okay. So going back to the abused children, the avoider, they would avoid intimate relationships altogether. If they avoid intimate relationships, they can't get hurt. That's their sort of mindset. Okay. And a surrender, will accept the abuse that they've experienced, and they will believe that they deserved to be abused as a child. And they, so that one's most likely to be the passive child. And they will continue to engage in abusive relationships, knowing that they're abusive and believing. What was that? Did someone say something?
Can we just make sure we're all muted, please, guys? Just in case. There you go. I think you're good, Holly.
Okay. So yeah, they will continue engaging in abusive relationships, knowing full well that they're abusive, but believing that's the way they deserve to be trapped. And then overcompensator is the aggressive child that we spoke about. And they will aim to be powerful, manipulative, or even insulting, and they will be the abuser so that they feel that they've got all the power and they can't be hurt because they're in control. So if we relate this to weight loss then, so an avoider, they won't engage in the process at all because they fear that they're going to fail. They know that they need to, but they're not going to do it because what's the point? They'll ignore that they need to lose weight, and they typically sorry, I've said that bit. Yeah, they ignore that they need to lose weight because they don't want to fail at the process. Now, a surrenderer, again, they would accept that they're overweight and that they need to lose weight, but should they engage in the journey, they're scared of that failure, so they half-heartedly engage in it. By half-heartedly engaging in it, they can't be disappointed when they do fail. And that's the surrender part of it. That's the difference to the avoidance. They can't be disappointed because they never put their full effort in anyway, and they knew they were going to fail. Now, the overcompensator will be the type of people that may engage in a weight loss journey to the extreme. They will be the people that are an extreme calorie deficit, whether that be 1,000 calories, 1,200 calories, whatever. And they'll be the ones that are training 7 days a week, because if they don't do that, then they'll always fail. So these are, it's changed the format. Oh, there are a few more on that slide, but they've not. It's changed the format since I made it. So these are the different schemata which, based on schema theory, can develop, and they will develop based on different childhood experiences. Not going to go through them all because I could be here all day. We're going to focus on the ones that are more directed towards weight loss and what you may have possibly developed based on having had failed weight loss journeys in the past. And they are the failure schema, the defectiveness schema, and the unrelenting standard schema. So A failure schema is where you feel like a failure relative towards your peers. You feel like you're not meeting the standard. You feel like everyone else is ahead of you, and you just feel like you've been left behind, sort of thing. Your actual achievements in life do not reflect your actual potential, because of this being scared to fail, you don't push yourself to your potential. And then your actual level, status, whatever area we're talking about, that often reflects that inner sense of failure. So that inner sense of, this is where I belong, this is my sort of level. Lots of oh sorry, Faye, I've only just seen your message. So yeah, lots of people message me saying they feel like a failure compared to where others are in their journey. This is a lot of you guys. Yeah. So I've done it before. I've compared myself to other people. Well, I can't get to that. I can't achieve what they've achieved. I do it with my friend all the time, actually. She's doing a PhD at the minute, and I always say to myself, I'll never be there. Okay. So primarily, people will cope with this through avoidance. So this is like avoiding seeking the knowledge and understanding to be successful, letting opportunities pass them by, and will not try to do it, whatever it is they want to do, through fear of failing. So that'd be like coming across Faye and Cam, and giving that opportunity up because, well, I can't be disciplined enough to follow what they're putting out there. But then more subtle avoidance, so it doesn't always have to be as black and white as that, is procrastination. So these are the type of people that I'll start on Monday, and then it's the next Monday, and then it's the next Monday. And by the end of the year, they've not reached their goal because they kept putting it off. So in the end, they end up failing anyway. By avoiding and by procrastinating, they still end up failing and feeding into the schema because they've just put it off. So then a surrenderer to failing, they're likely to twist events to fit the failure schema. What I mean by this is they focus on the negatives and they completely ignore the positives. And I've mentioned this to a few of you guys before anyway. So it might be, right, well, the scales have gone up, so I must have failed. I must have done something wrong, but you might have eaten late, you might have had a shit night's sleep. So yeah, I must be doing something wrong because those scales have gone up. Doesn't matter that I am losing weight. Overall, as an average, I've failed because those scales have gone up. Whereas an overcompensator with a failure schema will focus on excelling in other areas so that you don't have to focus on the area in which you're scared of failing. So I can't commit to a weight loss journey because I need to be at work 7 days a week, 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. I don't have the time. I can't fit it in. But because you're good at work, because you're good at what you do, you focus on excelling in that. So you still got that achievement, but you don't focus on the area which is scared to fail in. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. So how might a failure schema develop? So when I go through all of this, please don't, you might just hear the kids in the background now. Please don't think that I'm saying anyone that relates to this has had a bad childhood, parents have done wrong. Parents can contribute to a maladaptive schema by being too loving sometimes. So, you know, those people that are scared of everything, scared to walk out the door, that might be because their parents loved them so much that they overprotected them, that they didn't get to know how to navigate the world on their own. So they become dependent on their parents. Some people may relate to some of these, some people might not relate at all. So parents might be very critical of performance in school, sports, or different areas. Sometimes they're called stupid, dumb, and a failure. Parents might be successful and you felt like you could never live up to their high standards. Or you might have felt that your parents did not care about your successes, or they felt threatened by your successes. So they kind of just ignored them, brushed them under the blanket sort of thing. You felt like you weren't good enough as the other children at school. You weren't achieving high grades. You might have been measured unfavorably to your siblings and felt like you could never live up to them. So that was me. I'll go into that in a minute. You felt like your family was inferior in some way. So they might not have had as much money as other people. You might have been of a foreign minority. Your family in general might have been less educated. And so you just felt inferior to your peers. But then also your parents might not have set limits for you. And so you couldn't learn the self-discipline and responsibility needed to navigate the world, really. So they might not have told you, you need to get your homework done. You need to make sure you're active, that sort of thing. So you never learn those skills to be able to navigate in the world. So for me, I was constantly measured up to my eldest sister. I actually cried at getting an A in a GCSE maths because it wasn't an A star, because that's what my sister had got. And I felt if I went back with an A, my parents wouldn't be happy with me. So I do have a sense of failure in some tasks, and some tasks I have put off. One good example of that actually is some exercises in the past. I'll look at an exercise, I ain't got the coordination to do that. So I'll substitute it for something else that I know I can do. But rather than pushing myself to see if I can do the exercise I'm scared of failing at, it's all right because I'm still moving. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone relate to any of these? Do you feel like you could share, Z? That's okay if you don't want to. That's fine. Don't worry. Does anyone want to share?
I'm happy to share.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I'm the youngest of 5 children. I have 2 older sisters and 2 older brothers. And yeah, the sister closest to me in age, we were fairly similar, but also very, very different. And so her achievements, were sort of very lauded by my parents. And I felt like I was always having to live up to that because, if she could do it, why couldn't I do it? Yeah, in a way, I guess I felt like if I didn't do it, my parents didn't think as much of me as they did as my sister.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's really difficult to deal with. And do you feel like you have a similar outlook on life now?
No, not really, actually. I think going to university and taking some time out to actually discover who I was, realize that I am so different to her.
Yeah.
And we have completely different life goals. Like, she's a mum, she's a primary school teacher, being in a relationship and getting married and all that sort of stuff is really important to her fairly early on. Whereas I'm a bit more of a free bird in comparison to her. So once I realised that, it just made everything so much easier because I just wasn't comparing myself to her anymore.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Thank you. Does anyone else want to share, or do you want me to move on?
I'm happy to share. This is Rachel.
Yeah, go for it.
So with me and my brothers, it's definitely parents, well, mum not being bothered about any achievements. I think probably seeming threatened, like she's always got to be right and on top, and she's sort of very competitive. So any music grades, A levels, degrees, even PhD, mountain awards, it was just sort of not acknowledged at all. And it's taken a long time for all three of us, me and my brothers, to actually realize that's not normal, and to come to terms with that at ourselves and just accept that she's just like that. We're not gonna ever get that from her, but doesn't mean that we're not valued in other ways, you know. So but yeah, no, we're in sort of our 30s now, and it's taken us a good 10 years to figure it out. So yeah, it's been quite a journey to try and figure out.
Yeah, it can be really difficult to overcome those beliefs sometimes, particularly if you felt as a child you were really striving for that sort of attention for success and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think we probably all three of us either pushed or rebelled against it. Like my older brother refuses to play piano anymore, even though he was quite good, because he was pushed and never really got anything from it. So yeah.
Yeah. That's one thing I do wish I'd learned, piano. I love
it's good fun.
Thank you for sharing. Okay. So some behaviors that underpin a failure schema. So people don't take the necessary steps for development, such as coaching. They might choose a career that's below their potential. So they know that they can strive for more, but they kind of don't want to push that because they don't want to fail at it. Don't want to tolerate working for others or working at entry-level jobs, so they work on the periphery of the field that they want to work in, and failing to work up the ladder. They might take jobs that they repeatedly get fired for because they're late, procrastinate, poor performance, or bad attitudes. They can't commit to one job. They float from one job to another, never really developing the expertise in one area. This could also be related to fad diets, floating around from one diet to another. Might select a career which is extraordinarily hard to succeed in and do not know when to give up. I kind of feel like that's me sometimes. Afraid to take initiative or make decisions independently at work, so were never promoted or given more responsibility. Feel that you're stupid or untalented, so feel fraudulent even when you have made objective success. So that might be doing really well on a weight loss journey, but you feel like you're kidding everyone, and you don't accept the success that you have made. Minimize accomplishments and abilities and exaggerate your weaknesses and mistakes. You might have chosen successful partners and live vicariously through them whilst not accomplishing much yourself. Can't get my words out. Or you try to compensate for lack of achievement by focusing on other assets, and that might be your looks, charm, youthfulness, or being selfless and giving to others. So how might you change a failure schema? So first of all, you need to assess whether your feelings of failure are accurate or distorted. Are you focusing too much on the weaknesses and ignoring all the positives? Okay. Because if it's distorted, that's the thing you need to focus on. You don't need to overcome that fear. So think of current examples that make you feel like a failure, but then also compare those to feeling like a failure as a child, because it all stems from the childhood. So then you need to, it sounds a bit daft, but you need to dig deep and remind like that inner child that you did have skills, you did have abilities, and they were just completely overlooked. They weren't appreciated when you were a child. Now, why we have to focus on the inner child is because we can't heal as an adult without healing the child first, if that makes sense. And then you need to become aware of your skills, abilities, talents, and accomplishments in the areas of achievement. So recognize what you have done, what you have achieved. So for myself, all those knockbacks that I got at interviews, even before I got made redundant, all the knockbacks I got for just applications to become an assistant psychologist, completely ignored the fact that I did well at school. I did well at my A-levels. I completed university. Do you have completed? I got my master's degree. Like, I have done well for myself for the age that I am. And I just wasn't putting the right words down on a piece of paper to get those interviews. Now, if at this first step, your feelings of failure are accurate and you do still feel that you failed relative to your peers, you need to try and find a pattern to your failures. So, for example, have you avoided challenging yourself? Do you just not put yourself out there for that risk of failure? So again, with weight loss, have you failed to commit to a singular weight loss journey for long enough for it to be effective? Are you not utilizing the skills that you've got? Do you focus on the skills that you're not very good at? And are you not striving to reach your potential? So then you need to make a plan to change it. You need to focus on the things that you are good at and really get those down to a T. So for example, if you're good at planning your food, plan your food for the entire week. Don't just do it day by day. What I mean by that, sorry, a day in advance. Focus on planning that food for the entire week. And then that's one thing done. You don't have to focus your energy on that. If you're good at getting your steps in, make sure you get those steps in every single day. Give yourself credit for everything that you achieve. If it makes it easier, make yourself a list, tick it off every single day and give yourself credit. And then sometimes we need to make a flashcard to remind ourselves that we have got skills and we are making success, and we are, sorry, I'm trying to focus on everything at the same time and it's just not working. I will come back to the chat. If anything is really immediate, please just raise your hand on it and I'll come to you. Make yourself a flashcard. So on that flashcard, write down what you're good at and what you want to focus on each day, what strengths you want to focus on each day. Because if we're focusing on those strengths, we're reminding ourselves that we are capable of achieving. And get your loved ones involved as well. If you're not able to think of strengths for yourself, ask other people. They're not going to lie to you. Well, tell them not to lie to you. And don't accept like generic compliments like, oh, you're a good person, but what about me makes me a good person? You want specifics. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay. So we'll move on to the defectiveness schema. Now, a defectiveness schema is most likely linked with feelings of shame, and you'll go to extreme lengths to make sure you avoid that feeling. The feeling of defectiveness is that of the innocence. Nobody else can see it. It's not observable. It's just you feel inside yourself that you're defective. Typically, you won't feel angry in the way that you were raised or treated. You'll feel that you deserved it and you'll feel sad and ashamed about that. Many people will compensate for the defectiveness by setting themselves high standards for them to strive towards, because if they're hitting those high standards, they can't be defective. Other children might act arrogant or entitled, or may even develop narcissistic qualities. But that narcissistic persona is very, very fragile. And those people are extremely scared of that persona being cracked and the true self being revealed. However, if you know that you have defects and you're loved and valued and respected by your parents or peers or social influencers as a child, you're very unlikely to get a defectiveness schema. Now, the example I like to use with this is, take, for example, you've got someone with a physical disability. Physically, they're not able to do everything that their peers are able to do. maybe they're a leg amputee. They can't go running like their peers can, because they've got that defect. Now, if they're loved and valued and respected by their family in the right way, they're not going to develop this defectiveness schema. So that's something really important to focus on there. Now, a surrenderer, you'll lack confidence and look insecure. You'll constantly discount any evidence that suggests that you're successful, and you'll twist the evidence to support the defectiveness. Some of these may seem like they overlap, but they are separate sort of thing. So these people, they're likely to know that they're overweight, but feel that they will be unsuccessful in losing weight. They'll likely engage in a weight loss journey without putting the full effort in, similar to the failure that I mentioned, and not put full effort and focus in so that they don't experience negative feelings when they do fail, because they knew that they would fail all along. Now, an avoider of defectiveness will appear that they're normal, but is likely coping with addictive behaviors to avoid the pain of feeling defective. Now, that addictive behavior could be anything. Most typically with relating to weight loss would be overeating. These people are likely to know that they are overweight, but ignore it, doing nothing about it and feeling down and depressed about it. However, an overcompensator will outwardly appear really good and positive about themselves. It's really hard to believe that they might have a defectiveness schema. They become superior, demanding, and special so that they can't be criticized or ignored. Now, these people will still likely know that they need to lose weight, but they might focus on their self-love, self-confidence, beauty, work skills to compensate for their lack of ability to lose weight. So these are the people that you might see that are overweight, that are really confident in their body and really love themselves. Now, that's not always true, and they might be feeling really insecure, but that's their way of coping with that defectiveness schema. So what causes a defectiveness schema? Someone in the family might have been very critical, demeaning, or punitive towards you, repeatedly criticizing or punishing you for how you looked, behaved, or what you said. You might have been made to feel disappointed by your parents, rejected or unloved by your parents, potentially being abused by a family member. You might have been the one that got blamed for everything when things went wrong in the family. Parents repeatedly might have told you that you were bad, worthless, good for nothing. Repeatedly compared unfavorably with siblings, or that they were preferred over you. Or a parent might have left home or even passed away and you blamed yourself for it. Now, again, people might relate to these, people might not. These aren't the only ways a defectiveness schema will develop. There are other ways as well, but I can only put so many examples on there and think of so many examples. Another way that I was compared unfavorably to my sister, or felt that she was preferred over me. Something I'll never ever forget is she was the eldest, first child, always the favourite. I remember it was her 10th birthday. My mum made a huge deal about it. Oh my God, it's double figures. You're such a grown up now. So then it got to my 10th birthday. I was thinking, oh, I'll get the same fuss. Like, no, it happened last year for her. And it was just any other birthday for me. And that made me feel really crap. And I wasn't given the same attention and love that I thought I would have got for that birthday. So that's just one example. Again, does anyone want to share? If anyone can relate to any of those. Again, you don't have to.
I'll go for one.
Go
So
for it.
my mum is very critical in a loving way. She would say. But like when I was younger, and I used to say, like, if me and my friends had an argument or something, and I say, well, I said blah blah, and she'd turn around and she would say, well, I would have said blah 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 blah. It's as if to say, like, you did that wrong. You should have done it the way that I did it, or the way that I would have dealt with it. So having those expectations or criticism, I guess, because you're falling into like a different, you know, you're finding your own feet and doing it yourself rather than the way that they did it. You kind of made to feel a bit like it was the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And I've always been quite an emotive person, and I remember growing up, my mum used to say, why are you getting so emotional? Why are you getting so upset? Is it that important? And obviously as a child, yes, it was that important to me. But did I need someone else telling me that? Not really. Yeah. Okay. So then what are the behaviors that might underpin a defectiveness schema? So you might start becoming critical of your partner when you feel accepted and the romantic feelings have kind of fizzled out and disappeared. Then act in a critical or demeaning manner. So you kind of push that affection away. You hide your true self so that you feel that your partner and other people don't know you. And I've done that a lot in the past. You might get jealous and possessive of your partner because if they're showing attention to somebody else, you feel like that you're not good enough and that you're defective. You might compare yourself unfavorably with other people and feel envious and inadequate. So again, relating that to weight loss, look how much they've achieved. I could never do that. I'm not skilled enough to be able to do that. You're comparing yourself to somebody that might have been on their weight loss journey a year and you've been on it a month. So that's not a relatable comparison. You might demand reassurance that your partner still values you. And I used to do this all the time. Are you sure you still love me? Are you sure you want to be with me? And seeking that reassurance all the time. You might put yourself down around your partner because if you put yourself down first, they can't do it. You might allow your partner or other people to be critical of you, put you down or mistreat you. You might have difficulty accepting valid criticism and become defensive and hostile. Now, this doesn't mean all criticism. Of course, we can be defensive about criticism we don't feel sits right, but that valid criticism, jeez, Holly, who gave access to my brain. Sorry, Beth. But yeah, if you're not able to accept any criticism, then that's where it becomes a little bit of a problem. You might become critical of your own children. You might feel like an imposter when you are successful and anxious that you can't maintain that success. Now, Faye might remember this, and this was exactly me when I hit that all-time low for me. So as an adult, I have never been under 11.5 stone. And I started approaching that and I said to Faye, it's sitting uncomfortable with me. I'm getting really anxious about it now. But why? Why was I getting anxious about it? It's because I didn't feel like I could push past. And now I'm below 11 stone. So being able to push past that obviously does lead to more success. You might become depressed over setbacks or rejections. And some people can get really, you don't have a defectiveness schema if you're scared of publicly speaking, but if you do, it's because that fear that other people will see right through you and see the real you. So how to change a defectiveness schema? So again, you need to go back to that inner child. You need to compare your current feelings of defectiveness with how you felt defectiveness as a child. Yeah, if you're struggling, use something that currently makes you feel defective. Again, it's about repairing that inner child to be able to repair the behaviors as an adult. So list the signs that you might be coping by avoiding or overcompensating. So list those things that I've just been talking about. Are you critical of other people? Are you hypersensitive towards criticism? Do you deal with the emotion by overeating? Do you avoid getting close to people? Are you hypervigilant to rejection? So list all those ways that you might be coping with a defectiveness schema. And then you need to try and stop the behaviors. So for me, seeking that reassurance, I had to be able to reassure myself without going through my partner to reassure me that actually it's been nearly 10 years now, he's stuck around for one reason or another. I can't be that defective. And then monitor your feelings of defectiveness and shame. Whenever you start feeling like that, write it down. Use a diary, use a journal, and write what's made you feel defective. So did you feel insecure about something? Did you feel like you weren't good enough at a certain task? Were you comparing yourself to other people? And you can ask other people to highlight this for you as well. That's going to be extremely hard because you're going to be asking other people to criticize you. But it is really helpful for healing that defectiveness schema. So don't shy away from the uncomfortable feeling of hearing that. And then evaluate the seriousness of your current defect. Now, the best way to do this is pick out a defect you believe that you have and think about how you would feel if somebody else had that defect. So however you feel, say I was comparing myself to my sister, and if she had that defect, how would that make me feel about her? Because that's how you should feel about yourself. And try and remind yourself of that. Start a program to change the changeable defects. Now, this is relating back to those coping strategies that we use. Most of your behaviors relating to a defectiveness schema and the defects will be because of your defectiveness schema. So if you're the person that is constantly seeking reassurance, that's one of the behaviors that we can change, but that is also a coping strategy for the defectiveness, if that makes sense. Sometimes writing a letter to the critical parent or peer or whoever it was that made you feel that way is helpful. You don't have to send the letter, but getting it all down on paper, getting all those emotions out can really help as well. If you are going to do that, stress the good qualities that you had, that you feel that were overlooked and weren't praised. Sometimes writing down a flashcard can be helpful. Reminding yourself of all those skills that you do have and how unimportant the defects are that you have, that you believe that you have. Accept love from those that are close to you, friend, family, whoever. Allow that closeness in and stop allowing people to treat you badly, and also stop criticizing other people if that is something that you do. Okay, any questions on defectiveness before I move on? No. Okay, so unrelenting standards. Now this is me down to a T. So I will be giving some more examples in this. So the primary feelings with this schema is that you can never really relax and enjoy life. You're kind of always pushing towards the next task that you need to achieve. You won't believe that your standards are unrelenting, but other people will. They'll feel like you're striving for too much. Success is only apparent to those people around you, and you take your successes for granted, quickly moving on to the next activity you need to complete. And in terms of my profession and getting to where I want to be, that is exactly what I've done. Right, I've done my GCSEs, I've done my A levels, straight onto a bachelor's degree. Usually some people take some time out. No, straight onto a master's. Right, what do I need to do to get to the next step? What do I need to do to get to the next step? Always pushing forward and kind of brushing off that I've achieved those things. You probably don't feel successful, but you feel like that you're improving along the way, and that's what motivates you to keep going. You see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you never really believe that you're going to get there. You're not comfortable unless you're striving towards the next thing. And this is where it changes from a failure schema. You don't feel like you're failing. You feel like you're average, but you want to be more than average. You want to be the best of the best. And if your standards are too high and you're unable to reach them, it doesn't matter if you've achieved them, even partially. You feel like you failed. I thought you might relate to this one, Faye. Just with how you talk about work sometimes, you're like, I just need to get this done. So there's 3 kind of types of people in unrelenting standards. There's the compulsivity, and that's not like being a compulsive buyer or stuff like that. That's trying to keep everything in perfect order and attending to every single detail through fear of failing. If you complete something and then you know it was a mistake, doesn't matter if you've got the highest grade on it, you've failed because you've not attended to that perfect detail. There's the achievement orientated. They're the workaholics. They place excess value on high achievement at the expense of other needs and have to be the best of the best. They get angry at anyone that outdoes them or who blocks their ambitions, and is in a constant state of internal irritation. Then there's the status orientated, and they put excessive emphasis on gaining recognition, status, wealth, and beauty. This is a form of an overcompensator for core feelings of defectiveness or social exclusion, so other schemas. They never feel good enough. They're self-punitive, feel ashamed when they don't meet your high standards. And it can be a way for making up for emotional deprivation, substituting status for genuine emotional connection, but it's never good enough. So they're the sort of people that don't really enjoy the job, but they strive to be the best of the best so that they've got the most money and the best status. Oh yeah, I weren't saying you don't love your job. So a surrenderer, they believe that they should achieve their unrealistic standard to fuel their self-worth. So again, this is the I must train 7 days a week if I want to achieve my fitness goals. We all know that training 7 days a week is not sustainable, and usually isn't the best way to reach those goals. So the avoider will be the procrastinator, and they procrastinate because they feel overwhelmed by their standards and therefore don't perform as well as they could have, still not achieving the standards. So again, they'll be that I'll start on Monday and fail to achieve their goal for the year because they keep putting it off. And then an overcompensator will prioritize relaxation over being productive. So these are the type of people that, to be healthy, I need to find the right balance. So I've got to prioritize self-care above anything else. Otherwise, I'll not be successful in my fitness journey. So how does an unrelenting standard schema develop? So parents' love and affection might have been conditional based on meeting high standards. They might have only given you affection and approval or attention when you were successful or perfect. But there's also a flip side to this. You might have had really loving parents that gave you the love and attention that you needed, but they may have exaggerated that when you were successful. So I had 2 opposite parents. When we did well in our exams, my mum was like, yep, let's go out and celebrate. They need X, Y, and Z buy-in. They've done really well. They deserve it. Whereas my dad was like, no, we don't reward good grades. That's what they should be doing anyway. So I had high standards from my dad and my mum that wanted to lavish me with everything. You might have had parents that model high and unbalanced standards. They themselves were perfectionist, orderly, and status orientated or high achieving. They usually don't recognize that these standards were high. Unrelenting standards may have developed as a way of compensating for feelings of defectiveness, social exclusion, deprivation, or failure. Again, those are some other schemas. Or parents used to shame or criticize when you failed to achieve high expectations. So behaviors that underpin unrelenting standards. So because we're driving ourselves into the ground, basically, your physical health might be suffering daily because you put that much stress on your body and yourself that you overwork yourself into the ground. Balance feels lopsided between life and pleasure. You're not really enjoying life as much as you should. Your whole life seems to revolve around success, status, and material things, and you no longer know what makes you truly happy. You might put too much energy goes into keeping your life in order, so keeping lists, organizing your life, etc. And that is me down to a T. I make list after list after list, but I never do anything with it. Your relationships with other people might be suffering because you spend too much time trying to meet your own standards. You might actually make other people feel inadequate or nervous around you because they worry that they're not going to meet your standards. You rarely stop to enjoy your successes, and you're straight onto the next task. You might feel overwhelmed because trying to accomplish too much never seems because you're trying to accomplish too much, and there never seems to be enough time in the day. Your standards are so high, you view activities and as obligations or ordeals rather than enjoying the process itself. And I kind of got into that rut with my little side business of sewing, although I managed to get myself out of that now. You procrastinate a lot because your standards are too high and they feel overwhelming, so you just avoid it. And you feel irritated and frustrated a lot because things and people around you don't meet those high standards. And again, that's me with my partner. You want done the dishes, you want hoovered up. Why? The house is a shithole, and why don't you want it to be clean? I just push my standards onto him. So how might we change an unrelenting standard schema? So we list areas in which standards may be unbalanced or unrelenting. Now, you can't do this yourself because you don't believe that they're out of balance. You need to ask other people how to do it, what's out of balance. And those need to be people that you believe don't have those high standards themselves. Then you need to list the advantages of trying to meet those standards daily. So that's true as well, Faye. So you need to list the advantages of meeting those high standards daily. So what will you achieve if you achieve those standards? So for example, somebody that's money orientated, well, I can buy what I want then. Okay, but what other advantages are to that? Other examples might be, makes me feel special, people might be jealous of me, might be at the top of my career, my house runs in a very orderly way. But what are the advantages of running yourself into the ground by meeting those standards? Then you need to list the disadvantages of pushing so hard in these areas. Okay, no problem. Sorry, I'm running a bit late. So what are the disadvantages of meeting those standards? So what are you sacrificing to be able to meet those standards? You might be physically exhausted. You might not enjoy life. Your relationships are suffering. You might not be happy. Your health is suffering. And you need to ask yourself, is it really all worth it to meet those standards? Do the disadvantages outweigh the advantages? Then try to think about what your life would look like without these pressures. So what would it look like if your house wasn't perfect all the time? What effect would that have on you? What would you be able to do instead? And again, you need to understand the origins of the schema. So going back to the other slide, was your parents' love conditional? Did they give you extra affection when you achieved well? That sort of thing. Now consider what the effects might be if you lowered the standards by 25%. If 1 room out of 4 in your house wasn't clean and tidy and orderly, how would that impact upon you and your life in general? Would it be a disaster, or would it just be that you get to it another day? So if we relate that to weight loss, you've set yourself a goal for next summer. Now, how bad would it be if you didn't reach that goal? Would it be disastrous, or would you still continue to work towards that goal because at least you're making progress? And then try and quantify the time you devote to maintaining your standards. So make a time chart and allot time for each activity for each day. And when you get to that allotted time, you can't go over that. You can't exceed it, and you've just got to tolerate the level of achievement that you've managed to achieve in that time frame. And how does that affect you? Consider how important the tasks are to your overall happiness. If achieving it by 25% is going to make you feel depressed, then maybe you need to prioritize it a little bit more. If achieving 75% of it doesn't make you any more happy than achieving 100% of it, then it's not as important. And then try to determine what reasonable standards are, again, by getting a consensus of people that have more balanced standards and opinions. And then gradually try to change your schedule or alter your behaviours in order to get your deeper needs met. And what I mean by deeper needs is happiness, relationships, all the other things that are suffering that we put in the disadvantages, getting those needs met rather than just meeting the standards. Any questions on that? Okay. So, quick overview. Schemas begin to develop from childhood based on our experiences and help to shape the view of ourselves, other people, and the world. Our biological temperament will determine how we cope with these schemas, such as surrendering, avoiding, or overcompensating. We then repeat those experiences and reenact our childhood as an adult to feed into the schemas. Obviously, we do this subconsciously. We don't do it on purpose. Your parents or social influencers may not have behaved maliciously for these schemas to develop. And to change a schema and your behaviours, you must first understand the origin. Why did it develop in the first place? And how you're behaving that feeds into that schema in your current life. Now, most importantly, just because you relate to some of the things I've said, it doesn't mean you have an issue and that you need therapy. The amount of times I've heard people say, oh my God, that's me. You need to therapize me and fix me. It's not a case of that. With anything in psychology, it is how much it affects you, how severe it is as to whether or not you need therapy and you need to change those behaviors. Obviously, some of the behaviors that we've mentioned you might relate with, and although they might not be severe, you might feel that you still need to change them. But again, it doesn't mean you need therapy. You're not broken. And then the most important thing is you need to recognize the behaviors that are holding you back and how you might be able to change them, because ultimately that's stopping us from success, basically. And that is all from me. So if anyone has anything they want to ask me, feel free.
So whoever does have a question, you can either unmute or put it in the question box.
I'm going to remove my spotlight now. So one of my unrelenting standards thing is I have made and remade this presentation about 4 times. I've then practiced it on other people, because even now, after delivering it to you guys, I feel like I have rambled, nothing has made sense, and people haven't got value from it.
I'm dead sure some people, everyone has gotten value from this. Yeah, Lindsay's huge value. Thank you, Holly. That was great from Teresa. We'll stop recording now. Stop.